Okay, so I needed to film a quick addendum to this video before I get it started because when I announced it on my Discord, and as I say in the beginning of this video, that this was the last of the Discord reviews, and that I finally got them all done. And then as soon as I put that up, somebody on the Discord started to type, and I looked at who it was, and I realized when they didn't put a message up, I was like, did I forget to do their movie? So I'm struggling and I'm listening, I'm trying to figure out, remember who's what all the videos are that you did. And then I remembered and I found it. And I went, oh God. So there is, and it was a very hard movie to track down. And when we talk about it, we'll talk about that too. So apparently I was wrong. And well, as Yoda once said,
there is another.
Let's get weird, buddy. Let's get weird.
Guys, where are we?
Well, if there's a bright center to the universe, you're on the planet that it's farthest from.
welcome to the Outer Rim. Enjoy your stay. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun. And today is a very special day because today is the day that I can finally say that I recorded every single one of my Discord friends' requests to review something that they specifically asked for. Now, that is special. It'd be more special if I had done it like a year and a half ago. When, or maybe not a year and a half ago, but like if I had done it, this should have been done a lot sooner. All of those videos, except for maybe the first couple, should have been done a long time ago. And it started really weighing on me lately. Like, I have these amazing friends that put up with my shenanigans. You know, we're all special and unique in our own way, right? Like, we all have our things, and one of my things is letting things get under my skin so that I don't, you know, make content. Let things that make me feel bad or I put too much on myself, you know, all that kind of thing. Which I mean, right up front, folks, you've clicked on this channel. If this is the first time you clicked on this channel, welcome. If you're, returning, welcome back. Everybody wants to put, you have to put your reviewer. And for the longest time, I did that. But really, what my channel is, just to be straight up front for anybody new, is it's pretty much a vlog about my love for certain things, just topics I want to talk about. And I've talked a long time. I've got tons and tons of videos on my channel talking about things. And I realize that I really I like to discuss the things I love, and you call them a review, call them whatever you want, but I talk about things in ways that they make us feel. I feel like, yeah, I can go to like some big explosion movie and not really think about nothing, but I don't really go into that. I don't like a lot of those movies that have like nothing to say. I mean, I like my Marvel comic book movies, I like stuff like that kind of turn my brain off a little bit and enjoy the fun of watching, books I've read come across, come to life on screen, characters bigger than life come across, on screen. Um, but what I really like is talking about the smaller movies, the movies that make me think. Because when we watch something, our favorite show, our favorite movies, whatever, a lot of times we're sitting there thinking about how like we feel shit. It gets emotional. Listen to all the passion that's out there for all these fandoms, right? It's not all like negative. A lot of people have these positive feelings about any kind of movie or show or whatever it is that you love. And that's what this is really all about, is to talk about those things, these things that we love and tell like what does it make us feel? Why do we like the things that we like? When you're sitting there watching something, what is it feeling to you? And I talk about how it makes me feel, these things. And today we're going to be talking about 2009's Wes Anderson film based on the Roald Dahl book, Fantastic Mr. Fox. This was a request from a Discord member who I met at C2E2 2023. And I just, this person's newer to the Discord, newer to the friend group, but I as soon as I heard that this person wanted me to do this, I was excited. I don't know why I wasn't excited enough to do it earlier because Fantastic Mr. Fox, because now that we've gotten all that preamble out of the way, right? We're going to be discussing Fantastic Mr. Fox for my friend Lizzie. And as usual, I'm trying to be as ambitious as possible. I'm going to be doing this up. So whatever this looks like editing wise, like I didn't do this for Darren's video, but Darren's video was like 3 hours long practically. So what he gets in, the abundance of words, this Fantastic Mr. Fox video is going to have plenty of words, but it's also going to have some bells and whistles on it because I want it to for this one. All right. Fantastic Mr. Fox. What a great pairing of Roald Dahl with Wes Anderson, who just basically turns Roald Dahl's book into a Wes Anderson film with all the cast that you could want. Anybody, longtime collaborators with Wes Anderson, newer collaborators with Wes Anderson. It's got all of that. It's got all the charm in the world, and it's just that there's something, and he did those things on Netflix that I haven't watched. I don't know why. I see things that I'm like, I'm gonna want to talk about that, so I don't watch them until I'm ready to like talk about them if I know I'm gonna have time to do it. So I haven't watched the Roald Dahl shorts that Wes Anderson made, but I look at just the like thumbnails and I go, oh my god, live action, like Fantastic Mr. Fox. If this wasn't about a fox, if this was just about a guy who had a midlife crisis and played by George Clooney, who just, robs a bunch of guys, you could turn this into a live action show or movie, whatever. Because it's like something about Roald Dahl's work just fits in that world of Wes Anderson films. Maybe it's the stories themselves are very, I kind of see a play in my head. And I'll admittedly say that I haven't read everything that Roald Dahl's done. And it's kind of like, I've never even read Fantastic Mr. Fox. I knew of it, and then I heard about this, and I just never went and read the book. My big, claim to fame for a lot of people, I've read Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I also have read Willy Wonka and the Glass Elevator, Great Glass Elevator, I think is the actual title, and I've read Jack and the Giant Peach. And when I saw, Willy Wonka from back in the day, Gene Wilder, I mean, I was just talking to a friend yesterday about how one of the most the weirdest endings, or like one of the most unresolved endings, is the end of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because he goes up on the glass. Spoilers, by the way, if you haven't seen Willy Wonka, get on that. Spoilers for everything, basically. I'll warn you, I guess, but for like really old stuff, just get on that. But like at the end, he goes up into the Great Glass Elevator with Willy Wonka, and presumably, who knows? Like they could, if they had done a sequel back then. God, this is like turning into that. But this is one of my things that happens on my channel, as we start talking about something and we go off. Here we go. If it had been made back then, I'm really curious as to how what that would have been like, because I think Great Glass Elevator was like really different. Way different, right, than Willy Wonka. In fact, there was a lot more Willy Wonka, I think, in Great Glass Elevator. He was kind of more the guy behind the scenes who'd pop up like, ha ha ha. But they should not try to do it now. Don't even bother. Please don't, for the love of God, unless they make Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory like from the ground up, do a straight up like Roald Dahl version, and then do Great Glass Elevator. Because I would actually think that Wes Anderson could do that. I think the only person in the world who I would accept another Willy Wonka movie from would be Wes Anderson. I would love to see him do that, and then Great Glass Elevator animated, both like Fantastic Mr. Fox style, but otherwise don't touch it. And then you have James. I said Jack and the Giant Peach. James and the Giant Peach. Sorry, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've watched James and the Giant Peach or read it. I haven't read that book in over 30 years. And that one, I mean, the animation style I really liked. It was a lot more like Nightmare Before Christmas than this. And the story was kind of, I don't know, same as Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm just going to tell you right now. I love all the imagination, the way it looks, and all the work it went into it, but I'm not as big a fan of the story. I think Fantastic Mr. Fox is just way more up my alley. It's a mixture of adult humor, kid humor, things that both kids and adults can like. And I think it's one of those movies that, like, when we talk about how great we had it in the 80s for kids movies, I think this is like one of the best kind of like doesn't talk down to your kids movies that your kids can watch and enjoy. Maybe some will think it's boring, because it's not popping off all the time. But I mean, if your kid gets into writing, this is like this is a good movie for kids to learn about what good writing is and what's possible. Not just to mention the fact that, stop motion animation is still really cool. And when it's done right, this is like a high watermark for that. Not just for for stop motion, but also for, and this is kind of silly, but the anthropomorphous. Wow. I think everybody knows what I'm trying to say. The anthropomorphizing of animals in film and animation, where we've grown up. Everybody grows up with talking animals in cartoons, and now we've got live action shit. But I think writing wise, when you anthropomorphize animals, this is like a high watermark for that as well, because it mixes the real with what an animal's really like motif really, really well. And I mean, I've already been talking for like 10 minutes, and this is how it goes, folks. We're talking about everything that I can think of about this, and I've already talked about things that I didn't even know I was going to talk about. But yeah, this is like a high watermark movie. When Wes Anderson made this, I thought, oh my gosh, it's like the next progression. It's one of the reasons why I'm really happy to talk about this now, because after the Saulnier video and talking about that director's progression as each film went on, it's fun to talk about this as well, because Wes Anderson, I mean, you could start out with Bottle Rocket. It has that independent feel, but you could see the beginning of the Wes Anderson thing. You didn't know it at the time because you had to see like Rushmore or the Royal Tenenbaums afterwards to really see the style that he was building up. You get a little more money and you get Rushmore, you get Bill Murray. You get that soundtrack, you get that feeling that he's making plays into movies, but he's writing them down as screenplays. And I think that just about there's a lot of things that can get turned into plays, but really Wes Anderson films could be turned into plays really easy. And even so, you got that play feeling from Rushmore, and you start to get it more and more with Royal Tenenbaums and the Life Aquatic. And Darjeeling Limited was a bit more like a standard film to me, but still had a lot of play qualities. And I mean, also after 9 years after this, he made, Isle of Dogs, which, as much as that doesn't hit the marks for me as this does, but I really do still like Isle of Dogs quite a bit. And again, like I said, I feel like Wes Anderson and Roald Dahl are just such a perfect hand-in-hand thing. There are certain people that just know how to translate that kind of stuff well and whether it's by their own natural talent or things they are both similar at, kind of like how I feel about like Frank Darabont and Mike Flanagan, people who both adapt Stephen King really well. Somehow they're just that wheelhouse. Just if they work on the right project, like Frank is really great at the human stuff. Flanagan is really good at that too, but I feel like he's gotten more of a chance to excel with also the supernatural stuff, the more heavy supernatural stuff that King does, but that's neither here nor there. We're just talking about comparisons on people that are great with working adaptations from different people. So now that we talked about all of this, we got to talk about the cast, of course. I mean, George Clooney. I miss George Clooney, everybody. And it seems like every time I see him in something, it's like, oh, he came back for that, huh? I mean, he gets, when you reach to be, get to be the kind of career that Clooney has had and is like considered probably like some of the last royalty of Hollywood, if you want to put it in those terms, or leading men kind of things. I miss him doing like films like this. I miss George Clooney's shtick. I think maybe some of that shtick is in that Wolves movie with Brad Pitt. I think there's supposed to be a sequel. I don't know. Haven't seen it yet. Don't have Apple TV Plus. But George is perfect for this role. He's grown up playing cocky guys, smarmy guys. Another kind of, I don't know, Robert Downey Jr. kind of like presence as far as like can't take your eyes off him, waiting to hear what he's going to say next. He's the guy who just knows how to pop lines really well, and he gets so many opportunities in this to do that. But he's not alone with like Meryl Streep, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman, Willem Dafoe, Owen Wilson. Those are the big names. Adrian Brody. Oh, freaking the late great goddamn Michael Gambon, who is just steals every scene that he's in as the only memorable villain in this of Borges Bunsen Bean. The Bean, like him being Franklin Bean in this, just shows like what the guy can do with his voice. Yeah, the stop motion models for everybody in this are fantastic, but like, man, you look at like Franklin Bean and that voice of Gambon's coming out of that, just when he's like insulting that's the singer who's just singing a little like riffed song, and the guy's like, what are you singing? He walks up to everybody and just that dark out of the shadows, just pissed off hearing people praise like the Fox's adventure and how silly this all is. And he's like, what's that song? He's like, I'm just making it up as I go along. And he's like, that's bad, that's weak that's just weak songwriting, Petey. You've made a bad song. Like, he's just shitting on this guy when it's like, hey man, you can't do what he does. But that's what this guy is. That's how bad he is. He just shows up and like ruins things. So he's just fantastic. I mean, Brian Cox is in this, and all he is the reporter, the Action 12 reporter. Like, dude, it's like, hey, Brian, you want to just come on down here and record a couple of lines? Wes Anderson is in his own movie this time. He plays Stan Weasel. And man, there's just a lot of talent behind the camera. The people who make the stop motion, by the way, holy shnikes, does that take work? Like, I don't think, like, we sit there and we don't even like realize, I think, how much work goes into making films like this, how long it takes to make something like this. And I don't remember how successful this film was. It's one of the few things I haven't like looked up as far as like, oh, was it great or not? Because I don't want a sequel to this. I wouldn't want a sequel to this, but I'd hope by this time, if it wasn't that much of a success at the time, that it's like cult status, its popularity amongst people who, I think, man, if you don't like Fantastic Mr. Fox, I don't know. It's one of those movies where it's like, okay, if you think it's a little slow or whatever, if it's not your kind of bag like that, fine. But it's one of those where I still think that even if you don't enjoy it on some level, I think you'd be able to respect the quality and the work that goes into it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, the voice talent, amazing as well. The work that goes into it, the soundtracks, as always. Oh my God. I want a super like DVD. I got to go on YouTube and find like a Wes Anderson soundtrack compilation, because my goodness, is it still just like him and Tarantino, man, know how to put soundtracks together. I know there's more than that are really good at that, but those are the two that pop into my head of just like, they know how to create a vibe from an era of time. Because I mean, Fantastic Mr. Fox is kind of like in a 60s kind of vibe, but like he's great at that modern times thing, looking like old times kind of, and Tarantino's also good at that. I don't mind. I don't mean to keep bringing them up, but they both. Tarantino came on the scene sooner than Wes Anderson, but I feel like they kind of come from that same stock of like great writing. Speaking of great writing, I mean, this is co-written by Noah Baumbach, who's one of the great screenwriters of our time, if not any time. So just everything. I don't have anything like to say negative about this film. I don't, except for one thing. And it's not a thing that this movie is guilty of that many other films are guilty of. And it comes from like a lot of comedies for me, which is a film goes on and you're in the vibe, the moment, the laughs are there. You know that there's drama behind the scenes, but everything is popping and going and la la la. And then you get to that point where the movie has to turn from comedy to drama. And so many comedies, they do this where the conflict comes to a head, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's some, we got to take this seriously for a second. And I start to tune out in a lot of movies around that moment where it's like around like a lot of movies that are like 90 minutes long and they have a certain amount of time to tell all the beats of a story. When you hit that drama part, it kind of comes to a screeching halt. And even though like what's on screen is really impressive looking because of, again, all the work that goes into making stop motion, it's not the same as like an actor in a slow scene for a minute. Like there's less. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of production that goes into that, but there's definitely more production that goes into this in that kind of scene. So if it's a boring kind of scene and all that work went onto it, I hate that I don't appreciate some of it as much as it is, because I feel like the movie does get a little long in the tooth because of the kind of, okay, we stopped talking about Fox's journey and how Fox's journey and who he is as a person has affected his son. And now his son wants to stand out to his dad, prove himself to his dad. And so the story, even though it's still about Mr. Fox, it switches over to the son's arc, so that he, can learn a lesson. Both can learn a lesson. It comes to a head with the farmers, but it's that one. There's like usually like 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes of a film where it starts to get serious, where it starts to lose me. And this movie does it too. But like I said, a lot of movies run into this problem when you hit the drama. And it's like almost like you sit back in your chair for a while and you're watching and you're seeing it, but you're not as riveted. And then there'll be a moment where everything pops back up, and it's usually like rushing towards the action and the resolution of a film story, that everything picks back up and you're like, huh. You ever notice that? If you're ever sitting around, you kind of like blank out for a little while and then suddenly snap to you near the end of a film. I don't know. But to start off, I mean, because I always say I don't want my channel to be like the Chris Farley show where it's like, remember that part? But 21 minutes in, and I want to get to talking about like the start of this, like at the beginning of this film, right? Fox is just doing his thing. Now, I also need to point out that I love foxes. I fucking love foxes. I always have. I've but the problem with foxes is I've always seemed to see them in like situations that are dire. I remember seeing a fox run across a busy highway once. 4 lanes of traffic. This son of a bitch just was running his heart out, and a car's back right tire ran him over, but he kept going at full speed. And you could just tell, like, after he got to the ground, it was over for him. Like he was gonna run on pure adrenaline and then die somewhere, in pain. And it was, I'm sorry I'm bringing it up, but it's just like the other time was, I'm just saying my history of foxes isn't like when I've seen them hasn't been great. There used to be a family of foxes that lived behind my sister's house, and we would pay attention to them and like all the time say, oh my God, look at him and all little babies. And then one day they were just all gone. And that like they didn't just migrate. And I think when you're a kid, or until you've like experienced like a pet dying, You don't really think of anything as dying until, like when you're a kid and you don't, or like maybe a grandparent or a parent dies, but until you like experience death for the first time, whatever age you are, hopefully, I don't know. When is a good time to experience death? There's never a good time, right? I don't know. Is there a scientific study that says like when's the best time to experience death? But I think a lot of times, we don't understand that things don't last until we see it for ourselves. And I think in a lot of ways, we see our animals like they're gonna live with us forever. So I was really surprised that when I found out that like the average lifespan, and I've known this for a little while, but I didn't just do this research for today, but I did a little checking up to make sure my research was correct. That your average like lifespan for a wild fox is like 3 to 4 years. That's much better in captivity with like an owner, which is I don't recommend people. I'm not just going to go out there and tell people to buy foxes, but I've seen plenty of families that have them and domesticate them, and they're it comes with any difficulty as any animal can have, right? You got to be able to take care of it specifically. Everything has specific needs. It's just like us, and but they don't live for very long. And I bring that up because part of the story is, like a guy in a midlife crisis. He just happens to be a fox, and he's just doing his own thing. He's got a girl. He's probably like 30. He's been playing around for a while, even though in fox years, he's been alive for 7 years at this point, near the beginning of this movie. So in fox years, he's like well, at the beginning of this movie, he's more like 30. And he's been around for like 5 years. So he's past, like that was the thing, is like he's already past like the average lifespan of a fox. He is the what do you call it? The exception, not the rule. And I don't know. There was probably some research done, but maybe it was done on purpose. Maybe it was that he's lived this long. He's lived longer than he usually should with the kind of life he's led. But Meryl Streep as his girlfriend, he's got, he has responsibilities to her, but he's free willing, he's busting in places and, just being a fox, being a wild animal. And then, one moment, all of a sudden they get caught. She says, I'm pregnant, which I mean, again, flip flop the situations to like a heist or a robbery, you know what I mean? And put the two characters in there. And of course, you'd have to have somebody different from Meryl Streep, or you'd have to have somebody younger than George Clooney, probably, if you did this like in real live action back then. But just think about it as realistic situations. They're handling it realistically and dramatically, like a show. Somebody goes, that's the moment when you say, I'm pregnant, right as we're in big trouble, like, hey, we shouldn't have done this, I'm pregnant. And so we don't see them escape. We cut away to 2 years. We find out more about like the years of a fox, and now he did manage to escape. They got out of it with their lives. The shotguns were loaded, the pitchforks were coming. Has this new information, and he creates a whole new life. He stops all of his ways that he was doing as a free and wild fox to be domesticated in a way, and to take on greater responsibilities. He has a job. He doesn't go out there just slaughtering chickens or whatever. He goes, and that's how he pays the bills. They don't explain food in this or supplies in this. I don't know how they feed themselves, but it's one of those things where you just like, it's a story, it's a fable, it's whatever. So you just kind of take certain things at face value. But he's facing it. He's talking about his dad, of things that happen in real life when you look at your parents and where they are in their lives, or when they died, when they passed. Because for him, he's reached the same age as his dad as he died. And so it's hitting him, and he lives in a hole in the ground, and he doesn't feel like that's enough. And it's a lot of like what anybody else would go through in real life with a midlife crisis, especially if you're not satisfied with your situation. And so many of us aren't, right? We hit that wall of like, is this what it's come to? Is this all we're going to have? If I make a move, if I don't make a move now, I don't know if I'll ever find success. I don't know if I'll ever be able to give my family what they want, what I think they want or need. And doing that, you see the beginning of like how his reputation and the guy who used to be the football star kind of story of, and in my day, I was this and that and the other, and all the stories, and everybody talks about the stories about your dad, how great of a fox he was. And it's the same kind of pressure that real life parents put on kids when somebody in the family had like success. But now, like, it's, there's the continuing success someone can have, and then there's the past success where they've accepted and fallen into a role of husband, father, and moved on to what, they want the next stage of their life. Whether or not they miss those glory days or not, they've accepted it. Or at least for the most part, they've accepted it. And he wants to move into a better place, give them something better. And I like how she says foxes live in holes for a reason. And it's because that's where it's safe. The more you try to branch out in the world as a real life fox, the more chances are you're going to die. That's one of the reasons why they die. Starvation and other things, in real life, it can happen to any of us. Like in real life, if we don't, if not that I'm trying to compare our lives to foxes, but like, that's why I consider this a high watermark for anthropomorphizing animals, because they really did a good job of making them feel like people too. And putting them in situations that we can understand as adults. Now, maybe a kid doesn't understand all of this, but they understand parents and how they are with kids. And so there's that connection where a lot of kids can be like Ash here, played by Jason Schwartzman, who does an incredible job as always. Jason Schwartzman, I never realized like how great he was going to be. Like he's never been put to the top of like the A-list of like, Leonardo DiCaprio's and Brad Pitt's and shit. But he is way up there with the most consistently good actor in whatever he's in. Even if the thing isn't great, he's great in it. And he's just as good here as the spitting, ear twitching. And I know it's not him, but you go, man, again, so much work goes into the making of these models that it's crazy when you can see Jason Schwartzman basically as this fox. Even though he's not twitching his ears, you can see him almost doing it. We also have Mr. Kiley introduced here, the possum, which I love that because this guy is played by Wallace Wolodarski. And he's a long-term, he's a screenwriter and a producer, but he's a long-time collaborator with Wes Anderson. And I really liked this performance a lot as just the guy. He's just a regular guy getting dragged along with Mr. Fox's stuff. And I just love that he doesn't have to hardly do anything. He's a great straight man in this. And how these characters can just be like regular, like this is this guy and this is that guy. Maybe, and they don't just feel like one note. They feel like alive in this world. But they get into, they go to see the new house, the tree. And as soon as Mr. Fox, of course, sees the 3 farms from Bagus, Bunsen Bean, he now sees the opportunity for him to have his cake and eat it too. He can be the domesticated man, but on the side, he can be the wild animal that he wants to be. And he can, he can live this like double life. And there it is. Like, that's another thing that, like the person with a midlife crisis who, wants to, do bigger things, wants to return to that lifestyle. Maybe they want to return to the club. Maybe they want to just, they think they can start hitting the bars again or living, doing the things that they used to do. And I'm here to tell you that even, coming from somebody who, has, comes from problems with alcohol, but it's not just that. It's as you get older and you take on more things, you are not acclimated to that anymore. That you can't just have it both ways like that. Some people can go out almost every night, but as you get older, I feel like it just doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel sustainable as much. Maybe maybe everybody's different, right? Everybody's different. But I feel like for most people, it's got to be hard to try to have both feet in both worlds. And I'll say this on like a less like dire circumstance. It's one of the things that I talk about, like why I'm upset about my work life and my YouTube life. That if I was going to be big into YouTube, like if I was going to be a bigger YouTuber, I would have been able to get there by now, but I would have had to have put all my effort into this. But I always had a full-time job. So YouTube was that thing. Like Foxy's seeing those farms. Like he really wants it. He wants to go out there. He wants to go back to that life. He wants to reach in and be the best at it. But if you start to do the one thing you love too much, then you start like not taking care of your real life responsibilities, both lives, it's not sustainable. Whether it's, somebody who has an affair or whatever, like they try to like hide it forever. Most of the time you will get caught because you can't keep that kind of thing up that well. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people actually that keep those kind of things secret, but you know what I'm saying? And so him trying to live this double life where, he gets the guy to go along with him and the thrill of the chase of going in. And because we're not talking about like every little scene, we're talking about this like in different terms. So he's robbing these places. And again, animation all looks great. But he gets a taste and he can't stop. And you just know that this is headed towards disaster. I also just the introduction of the villains with the song and everything, and then we got Bill Murray as the Badger, and the whole cussing, that brief scene that everybody likes about, "You cussing at me? Are you kind of cussing me? I just love it where they suddenly start to devolve into hissing animals. That we see the introduction of these guys and what they're all about, and the lawyer telling him, look, man, you should not buy this tree. This is right by the most dangerous people in the world. But he feels poor, and it was one of those things I was thinking about, like when he's gotten the tree, but that's not enough. He's still searching he wants to be both the guy he was and the guy he is now, but he also wants money too. And it's like, one of the things I thought about was like how, like he got what he wanted, but it's not enough. He still is searching for more. And this is kind of coming across as like wealth. Like how much wealth do you need before you stop feeling poor? Because it feels like there's plenty of people that get money, whether it's from the lottery or inheritance or just genuine old work. I feel like the human race has got this drive to like where it's just like you get, and especially if you're living in a capitalist country, where it's just like it's never enough. Like it's like the fear of losing it makes you work harder to get more. And then do you ever not feel poor? Do you always feel like when like it feels like so many people get to that point, but they're never able to be satisfied because they're afraid of losing what they worked for. I don't know. So we got like my feelings. Let's say, so there's a character named Christopherson that joins in, who's the nephew or cousin, I think, of Ash. And he's played by Eric Chase Anderson. And he's basically like the opposite of Ash. He's good at everything naturally. The girl likes him. Like, it's just he's perfect. But he's in a bad state because his dad has got double pneumonia. And everybody feels sorry for him, and he's good at everything, and he's staying at their house, and Ash is not having it. The girl that he liked, is just all falls head over heels for him. And I was thinking about how kids, because, how Ash acts to him, how he just says things that they're just awful. And how kids, and I've heard, you hear plenty of kids that just say things and you're like, holy shit. The thing is we all said stuff like that they say. Where it's like we're all narcissists on some level for the most part, right? I'm sure there's a couple of us that aren't, and most people I think are in self-denial about the narcissism part. But like I've said before that I think some people grow out of it, but I think a lot of us are still in the end like pretty self-serving just by nature and need and survival. But kids, they don't they don't learn right away how to not be like completely self-serving, and they'll say things that you just know right away are like you're only caring about this because somebody else is getting attention or whatever, and they're just as better at not hiding it. They just come right out. It's not till later that they learn about it and whether or not like we choke down those narcissistic tendencies. I mean, kids are mean, right? But it's like in the scene, like he's so mean to him, but when he breaks down and Christopherson is crying, I also noticed that, and then, lots of kids though they can be mean, but as soon as they make someone cry, or someone is crying, like that's hurting, especially another kid or whatever, or whoever really, kids are like also the first ones to feel that empathy and try to fix things. And Ash does that here with the train set where he's, the poor kid's sleeping under his like his coffee table. I'd be crying too. And he never stops like giving Christopherson crap for feeling, for his own feelings of inadequacy. But in that moment, when he made him cry, he had empathy. And that's a great thing to teach kids is like, if you do something that hurts somebody's feelings, you need to make up for it. You need to make amends. And I think again, kids are quicker to forgive and feel that empathy and do things rather than adults. I think when life gets more complicated, I think adults have a harder time at like getting to that point quicker. So so the plan in this, he has a master plan. He's going to rob all the farmers, right? And he's, it's very Ocean's 11 meets Wes Anderson style. And this is where we first hear the motif about the wolf. It's brought up several times, and we'll get to that at the end because I did like looking that up to find out what did that mean in this. Like I had ideas, but I didn't want to like, just make my own stuff up, even though everything's up to interpretation. It can mean whatever to anybody. Also, Whack-Bat. I wanted to just chalk this up as like Wes Anderson being Wes Anderson, but it also feels like they're talking about cricket. That fun sport from Britain that I don't have any idea about it, but it feels like cricket rules whenever I've heard somebody describe cricket. I just don't care about sports mostly. So, but I did think that this was like, even if this is just a made up sport and it's not basically cricket, I love that somebody made this up if it's made up. But in this situation, you're seeing like the athleticism of Christopherson versus Ash. So when Christopherson gets invited to the heist and Ash isn't, this again creates more tension for Ash, showing like that this is the kind of life that, this is the kind of, what do you call it? Like looking at like when you want to look up to your dad or whatever, and he's favoring somebody else, you know what I mean? And it. And he's creating that insecurity for his son. But he's too wrapped up in his own stuff. Like his wife says at one point, you don't listen to anybody. And when they get into the cider place where we meet Rat, which is played by Willem Dafoe, of course, with the little snap and the little jazz and everything, that they know each other. I like that they have these characters that like have a history, but we don't know. And they start talking about some of the history, especially when he starts bringing up that Fox's wife was like the town tart. But they successfully robbed the place again. And now the farmers have been like, they've got to have a meeting. It's time to kill this fox. And so we also, at the same time as them doing that, we have Mrs. Fox finding out, about what Fox is doing, because at first it starts with one chicken, then like a goose, and then they've got everything. They've loaded it up and he can't hide anymore. I like the line, if what I think is happening, it better not be. But they decide, and one of the things I liked about this and what this made me think of, this part where it's called the shooting, and where they shoot his tail off, right? And it's one of those things where, well, first there's the line that Ash says about Christopherson's dad, that, and here I am being Chris Farley for a second. 1 foot in the grave. His dad has 1 foot in the grave and 3 on a banana peel. It's like, oh my God, that's great. What a great line. And it also is where they bring up the whole you don't listen to anybody, and they start digging like crazy. And she wants to know why he lied to him about it. Why did he lie to her about all of this, what he's been up to? He ends up saying, I'm a wild animal. But she says, well, you're also a husband and father, and we all die. And unless you change, we're all going to die too. And that is, it's describing like somebody finding out about a double life, and that person giving that person a chance to say, like, look, you have to change or this is over. You're causing major damage because you wanted to have fun. Your son screwed up. Everything you worked for is basically gone. They've come after you. And the coming after you part really made me feel, and again, this is my interpretation, but it was like these 3 rich guys who they have a little bit taken from them. Somebody gets over on them a little bit, just a little bit. They took like a couple of chickens. He took a couple of bottles of cider. They took a few geese. How does the rich person respond? The rich person comes with everything. They go full tilt bore on this fox. They blow the hole up to a point where every animal is trapped inside. Like it's they go overboard to like crush the poor fox. And I felt like there was a huge, like, pretty on the nose look at like how the rich just crush the poor whenever like it suits them. You take a little bit from us, we're gonna just ruin you. You want to threaten us with a lawsuit, we can just crush you. And it's scary to me. And I know that, like, this is just me. This is my, this is how I felt about it at the time when I was watching it. This is what it put in my head. I was like, man, like they go way too far. Even they admit later on, like, I don't think we need to be going this far for just this little bit. It's a total cluster cuss. I mean, it's a siege, they call it, right? It's like they have 108 snipers around the hole, all ready to kill them. And in the hole, amongst all the things and the conversations that they have, Mrs. Fox pulls Ash aside because they're trying to, like, get a plan going to come back and, resolve this whole thing. And he's feeling bad, and she pulls him aside, and she says, I know what it's like to be different. And he responds is like, I'm not, though. Am I? And she says, we all are. Him especially, pointing at Mr. Fox. But there's something kind of fantastic, isn't there? And he says after she leaves, not really. I'd rather be an athlete. But that's youth. The youth hearing what he doesn't want to hear, right? He should want to hear it. He should want to feel different. But when you're a kid, the last thing you want to be is different. And that's what sucks, because that's what makes everybody great. And that's one of the other things in this movie is about our differences and all the weird things that make each and every single one of us fantastic. He's just not ready to hear it yet. And that's where I say, I wrote in my notes here that it's around this time that I got kind of tired. I get tired of a lot of films, run times and everything, can be tricky depending on the concept. And, I love that they end up stealing from the farmers while they're being chased. Like the farmers spend so much time trying to just kill and capture a fox that it gives them the opportunity to double back and rip them off even harder. And that's where we switch over to the son's plot, basically. And it was, like I said, it was in this is that section of the film where you start to go, okay, for me, there's like this little lull, between arcs, switching from the father to the son. That's a little slow to me. Maybe it's our attention spans. I don't know. At least mine anyway. And he's trying to prove himself. His arc takes over the film from here for a while. And this is where they flood the tunnels with the cider. And again, just all the animation just looks so good, whether it's the different ways that they did, the films and the stop motion in this. It's so inventive and imaginative, and it just, I almost want to like grab a controller and start playing it. You know what I mean? It feels like a video game. There's parts where it's like Mario, where you're jumping over and flipping over things like on a side scroller. I love it. But there's in this, it's there to me. I was thinking about quitting while you're ahead, even like maybe some of these videos that I go on too long about. I don't know. I don't care. But pushing your luck. And does everyone succumb to greed and cockiness? Because again, like, they should stop. He should stop. They should stop. Both parties should stop. Like, he can't stop and they can't stop. He can't stop his nature of like trying to get over on these guys more as much as they don't like being gotten over. And I feel like a lot of people are like this. They just, we all like, we get a little, I don't know, overly ambitious at times is all. And then, hang on a second here. I got to read my notes better. Okay, I've read my notes better. Okay, so this gets to the part where he talks honestly, and he says, I have this like compulsion, this need to have everybody think I'm great and I'm intimidating. That we're wild animals. And again, speaking of to like a lot of people that have that like compulsion to like be the center of attention, to have everybody talk about them, to have that need that, and again, if you're on any platform or you want to be an actor or whatever, and anybody says like, I don't like to be no, get off your, like, you might not want to watch yourself on screen after you make something or whatever, but again, narcissistic, there's a bit of narcissism in all of that. There has to be. And being narcissistic about certain things doesn't mean like it's a bad thing all the time. But when it runs your life, where you only think about what's good for you and not caring about the repercussions for other people. Have you ever like, that's something to think about. Is a lot of times I think we don't think we affect other people's lives, but we do. It's just that other people are just like us, have a bad time communicating it, right? Because she's like, I shouldn't have, like, I love you, blah, 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 but I shouldn't have married you. It's like, damn. But Fox, in this moment, he opens up and he tells his son, this is my fault. I did this. I created this. You're insecure because of me. I love you. I'm so happy that it's you that we get to be with. And he didn't do enough of that, I think, up until this point. It had to get to this, but it sucks that it has to get that bad for you to finally snap out of it and see the damage you've done. But hey, it's a movie. It correlates, a lot of people, some people don't ever get to that point where they can have those conversations with people. Sometimes people pass away or leave your life, move far away, and you don't get a chance, even though, we're living in the world of technology, but whatever. So I did want to bring up one scene that just looked really cool, and that was the electricity fight with Rat, where they're just doing the like quick frames of the fight. And that Rat just wanted cider. So, he's sitting in there. He's got a job. Who gave him that job? He's got a badge and everything. He's down there. I think it's like in real life, it's more like they just threw a rat down there to keep things from whatever. And the rat just happened to like that job, like the cider so much that he's protecting it so much, like a drug, that anybody going down there, he'd protect it with his life. He'd protect the Bogus Bunsen Bean people with his life to always have that cider. I just thought that that was an interesting little thing. But he's like, after all is said and done, he's just another dead rat in a dumpster behind a Chinese restaurant. But his last speech is when he talks about all the one of the last speeches, because again, Clooney's great at monologues and speeches. All the beautiful differences we have using, like he talks about everybody that's there and how they use everybody's natural animal talents. Like you're this, Latin name for whatever you are, rabbit, squirrel. And they say what they can do, and that's what they can add. All the things that make every single person different. They all have a role that they can play. They can all be a part of something. And again, that's just another great lesson for all of us. We get on each other so much about how we're different when we're so much the same at the same time. And all the things that make us different are the reasons why we should be friends. It's the reason why we should be progressing further in this world. It's the reason why we shouldn't let politicians and other people tear us apart for their own gain. We can all have different beliefs and stuff and think different things, but it should never be so much as to take away from how we can all progress together rather than apart over the stupid things that they tell us to be pissed off at each other about. Because if we're paying attention to us and our differences and arguing over what religion or what gender or what sexual orientation you are, while we're all arguing about that, they are robbing us blind and treating us like children because we're just falling for their shit, and we continue to fall for their shit. And yeah, this is taking a turn, whatever, but that's what I was thinking in this moment is he's like talking about this, and I always it's a great lesson for kids. Don't let our differences keep us apart. Our differences are what make us all beautiful and worthy, and we should be working together, not tearing each other apart. So when he finally sees the wolf right at the end of this, I finally looked it up, and it was like that the wolf represents the wild inner shadow of Fox, the civilization versus the wild, and how we all try to live in both worlds a little bit. We can a little bit. Go one way or too far the other. And if that makes your life, if you want to live all wild and that works for you and you're not hurting anybody else, fine. But make sure you're not hurting anybody else. I don't mean literally necessarily. Literally psychic damage, that kind of shit. So that struggle that we have, where we have that pull towards the wild side of us, but we know we got to live with both feet in the real world. And at the end, they find the grocery store hole. Happens to be also run by Bogus Bunsen Bean, but hey, they run everything. It was going to be impossible. But they find the thing that they can take. They even talk about, hey, this place closes between such and such and such and such. No one will even know. And maybe, we're supposed to leave that to interpretation of well, they'll probably find them. It's someday. There's more adventures that we just don't see, and that's fine. And they're all fine, and they're all together, and they've figured out how to live with each other, to be aware, as Fox puts it. And so it's such a fantastic movie with a fantastic title. And I hope that I have come to some kind of ending here that is satisfactory for most people. I do things my own weird way here, but I will leave you all with this, as they say in the movie, right? So don't forget to hit like and subscribe and all that jazz. But as the end of the film says, to all you fine animals, let's raise our glasses to our survival. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Ba 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 bum. Ba bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum.